This session, we want to get familiar with inputs that we receive from the player so that it would be converted into movement. For example, I want to control the player to go right or left or to jump. So, how to receive those things from the player mind and move the player inside the game. The value that the player wants to move to right is 1, and if it moves to left, it means -1. So we have to get that number to from the person that is playing, and then have that in our movement calculation. So yes, we have the rigid body. Let's get rid of them, the thing that we don't need. Um, so yeah, we can delete them. So let's do a little bit better. And in the update method, we have to determine that. You know why? Because in every frame, we have to check that. It doesn't mean that the player from the start of the game just once said, okay, I want to go to right. No. Every time the player by the player, I don't mean the player inside the game. I mean the player that is a person that is playing the game. So maybe he changes his mind and wants to go right and left. So we have to check every frame. That's why we put it here. Somehow we could get a number 1 or -1 to know that if it is moving from to left to right or left. So we say float, for example, direction, and then we say input dot get axis, and then we say horizontal. Horizontal. This is something that you have to memorize. Horizontal means yes, right or left. And then we want to say RB dot velocity. So we give our player velocity. It has a rigid body. New vector 2, because we are in 2D. Then here we say the direction, which could be 1 or -1. Then we want a speed. So let's change it to speed. That makes more sense. So that is for the X. How about Y? The Y axis. For that I said, okay, just keep your height as it was before. So RB dot velocity, that's Y. So that's it. So now let's go to the game and check that. Okay, I use the right arrow on the keyboard and it moves right. And I move the left and it moves to left. Also, I press D on the keyboard and also I press A on the keyboard and it moves. So, yes, so now that we have, it moves to the collider. Oh. So now we want to add another interesting things. For example, like jumping. So let's go here. But before that, we have to specify that from which surface the player wants to jump. From here, okay? Then we go to layer and make a new layer. For example, Earth. go to floor, and make it earth. So I want to say that if you land on the floor here, which is floor, but it's in the layer of the earth, because I might have multiple. For example, let me show you in the 2D sprite square, and I want that it jumps to be able to jump from that as well. So what should I say? I make it earth. So I have earth, for example, that is, oops, so both they're different, they have different name, but they're from the both layer. Also for tagging, you can use tags. So one, but remember that player should always be the one that has a tag. For example, this one should always have the same tag, but different elements here. They have, for example, enemy. You should add more enemy and give it different. Give this tag, or for example, for different things here, you can give the same layer. Okay, so now I have specified that. What should I want to say? Okay, first I want to say that if this is the earth layer, then my player can jump on that, apply a force to the ground and jump, and then land on that. And it can only jump if it has hit the ground, and then it can jump. I will give you, so that is the whole vision. Now let's go step by step. I can write down here, and we say, if you press the jump button, say input dot get button down. You should exactly write the name correctly. Okay, and later we don't need that, because in our real projects we're going to use a new input system and we don't need these things. The new input system makes it able to use, for example, um, you press the same thing, and it will detect that if it's on the PC or in the mobile, and it connects them, and you don't worry that if it's a keyboard or if it's a phone, it's just trigger, for example, the jump. But for the sake of this tutorial, to make it simple, I use these formats. So we want to say that if the player press the key, the space bar, that is a jump, this is something that is inside the Unity engine. You cannot change that. Then you want to say that you have two ways. We can add force, rb.add force, or we can say rb.velocity new vector 2. Okay, the x should be the same, because we don't want to change the direction here. When you jump, for jumping, you need to change the height. We don't want to say that it should be 0, the x, because it might be moving. So when it jumps, it kind of bring the curve movement. So I want to say that whatever x that you have, just hold that, rb.velocity.x, okay, just have that. But your y should change, for example, to 10. Don't do that. Just say, for example, something like this, so you can change it from the editor, and also that is more readable. And I say jump force, which is 4. Okay, and I say jump force, so the y value is jump force. I press jump and it works. For Example, yes. But you see that I can spam jumping, and the player, even before it has hit the ground, it just moves up. There are various approaches to solve this problem. One of them is that we check if the player has um, hit the ground, and then if that hit the ground, then we allow that to jump again. So we need a variable, a boolean, and for example, say is jumped or is grounded. So in yes or no. So that is a boolean. So bool is grounded. For example, you use a collider and say if it hits that, so is grounded is true. And for example, if it exceeded that collider, it is false. But the most common thing is using raycast. So what is raycast? First, you have to have the kind of collider which you have. The idea is that the game engine sends an invisible ray, and then you set the size of the ray, like X-ray, and then you set the size. For example, you say what 0.1. In 0.1, if it hits any object, for example, object of the ground layer, then is grounded is true. But if it goes in the sky, then it becomes false because the ray that has the length of the ray that is 0.10, 0.1, the ray cannot reach the ground. So this is not grounded, okay? Because the ray maybe be that height, okay? So it wouldn't get to the ground. So they don't collide with each other. They don't touch each other, and so that is false. Which means that it is not grounded. They don't touch each other. But as it is, the player comes here, then your ray touches the ground. So the condition is true. Yes, they have touched, so that the player is grounded because they've touched that, and one point 0.1 is very close to the ground, so it is grounded. And when it is grounded, then you have permission to jump again. So how to use the raycast? Don't worry about, maybe at first glance, it is kind of weird, but don't worry. If you learn the concept, then the form of the code is not important. You just kind of memorize it, and it is important that whenever you see the shape of the code, okay, that code is for that. So you don't need to memorize each part of that. So let's go to the code. We can put it in the update. We say raycast hit 2D, and then we give it a name, which is usually hit, equal, so that is something in the Unity. You didn't just make something of your own, but you can change the name here. Physics 2D dot raycast. And these are just something that you have to kind of learn and to memorize them. So at which place the raycast should start? We say transform that position. It means the position of the player itself. Okay, because the code we give the code to that. So from here, and You have vector 2. At which direction I should give the ray? Down. So for now, for checking the grounded, it should be direction to the ground so that it's down. But if you want to, for example, jump on the wall, then that is in front of you. But for the ground, that is, we use vector 2 down. What is the size of the raycast? 0.1 is good. You can add F for float. And you should give a layer mask. Do you remember that I gave the floor the earth layer? So to define the layer here, I should say, let me just go into the one line and Control D, and it will automatically, okay? And now we want of type layer mask and earth, for example. You can give it any name, it's not important. This is something that we have to assign in an inspector. So which layer for example, if the player hits to everything, for example, even to this is considered jump, you can't set that, but you want to specifically say to this layer, to this one, to the earth, to the ground that has this layer name. Okay, that is the earth. Oh, sorry, I just forgot that you needed to the, because you're in the 2D environment, sorry. And now you have to check if hit that collider, it means that it have collided to anything, is not null. It means that it has hit to something, that the raycast has hit to something. It means that the player has hit to something. Then is grounded is true. Else is grounded is false. Okay? And then I added here, if I press the space button and it means that both of the let me write it first. If it's grounded. When you use and, it means that both sides of the condition, should be true. If you say or, it means that if one of them is true, that is fine. You can execute the rest of the code. But here it means that both of them should be correct. First, you should hit the jump button, and also the player has to be grounded. Then you're allowed to perform this piece of code. So let's go and check that. Oh, sorry, in the inspector, something like this in the code appear. So the earth, what do you mean by earth? I mean the earth that was here in here. So we have to specify that. So yes, now this is working. Okay, it didn't jump, but then I adjusted this because depending on the player size, uh, maybe 0.1 is not enough, so you have to increase that. So play with this number. Um, there's no fixed number for that, so it depends on your game and your model. Yes, so now this works just fine. If I'm in the middle of the air and I spam the space button, it doesn't make that the player fly, so everything works just fine. Now you may want to add double jump because you have seen in many games and when a player in the middle of the air, it can jump just for one more time. So for that, there are different approaches. First, let me move that to another function, and the function should be out of sight. So that is the void jump. I could give any name that I want. So yes. So now I just want to count that. If the player have jumped, that the number of the jump is 1. Then if it hit the space, if the jumping is 1, it can hit the space again, which means that we have 2 jumps. And then we check. If we have 2 jumps, then it cannot jump. So let's do that. Let's say private int jump count. At first it is 0. Then so this is a function. How to call that? It's not called on itself, so we have to call it somehow, which is here. So if they so remove that part as well. If the player hits the ground, so doesn't mean that it has any double jump. So it would return to normal jump if it want to jump another time. So we say if it's grounded, jump counts is just 0. So it just starts everything from the beginning. And it's ready to have a normal jump. And then in the middle of the air, if you hit the jump, it should jump. Then yes, do this. You're allowed to do that because jump count is 0. You've not used, for example, you're not in the middle of doing 3-4 jumps, and so you're just on the first jump, and this is fine to jump. And after you jump, then we say jump count plus plus. So it added to 1 jump because you've used your first jump. And you have another jump available. Unless that you have to come to the ground to be is grounded and then start everything over again. But now, first you're is grounded, you're on the ground, then you jump, and the jump has come to 1. Now decide. If you press the space button, then you jump another time, which is allowable because we say that you're allowed to have double jump. Now, if your jump count is equal to 1, it means that you first have jumped. Sure, if you have once jumped for the second time, we allow you. No, you can give another jump force. For example, usually the first jump is bigger than the other. You can, for example, add another jump force 2 and give another number, but you can also use this one. So you've jumped and another jump count. We should increase that, right? 2. Then, for example, if you want 3 jumps, then you can say, else if it is, for example, equal 2, then jump plus plus to 3, then we can have another jump too. So that is one of the ways. Now, what does it look like in the game? One, two, 1, 2. I cannot jump 3 times. I cannot spam that. If he is once, 1, 2. But you cannot say 1, 2, 3. No, just 1 and 2.